Welcome to A News. I'm Katie Wilson. Here are the top stories for today. Trump dismisses Ukraine concerns and says he may meet Putin this month. European Union agrees on 16th package of sanctions against Russia. Fierce clashes continue in Khartoum as Sudan faces escalating humanitarian crisis and political deadlock. US President Donald Trump says he may meet Russian President Vladimir Putin this month. At a press conference, Trump responded probably when asked if he still expected to meet Putin before the end of this month. His remarks followed US and Russia discussions on Ukraine in Riyadh on Monday. Trump dismissed Ukraine's concerns about being left out of the talks in Saudi Arabia. However, he criticizes Kyiv for being unable to reach an agreement with Moscow in the last 3 years. Trump added that he would not oppose European nations sending peacekeepers to Ukraine.
And I'm very disappointed. I hear that, they're upset about not having a seat. Well, they've had a seat for 3 years and a long time before that. This could have been settled very easily. Just a half-baked negotiator could have settled this years ago without the loss of much land, very little land, without the loss of any lives, and without the loss of cities that are just laying on their side.
Sir, do you support stationing European peacekeeping troops in Ukraine as part of this peace deal?
If they want to do that, that's great. I'm all for it. If they want to do that, I think that'd be fine.
Even if the Russians are
I know France has mentioned it. Others have mentioned it. UK has mentioned it. But if we have a peace deal, I think having troops over there from the standpoint of Europe, we won't have to put any over there because, we're very far away. But having troops over there would be fine. I would not object to it at all.
US President Donald Trump is facing backlash from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, who accuses Trump of spreading Russian disinformation. Zelensky also rejected a US offer of a security deal in exchange for Ukraine's minerals. Stuart Smith is in Kyiv with more on the story.
President Volodymyr Zelensky said that with all due respect to President Donald Trump as a leader, he is living in Russian disinformation space, as evidenced by, Kyiv says, the fact that he has helped end the isolation of Russian President Vladimir Putin, and because President Donald Trump repeated a claim that Kyiv says has been spread by Moscow, that President Zelensky here only has a 4% approval rating, which conflicts with the latest data from the Kyiv International Institute of Sociology, whose latest poll says that 57% of Ukrainians trust President Zelensky, 37% do not. It also noted that his trust level has increased by 5 percentage points since December 2024. Evidence, the Ukrainian president claims, that while martial law has prevented presidential elections, he does still hold legitimacy throughout Ukraine. The president addressed that minerals for security deal, which Kyiv has so far refused to sign, saying that Washington, while Ukraine is up for providing minerals in return for help from Washington hasn't said what security guarantees Ukraine would get for that. And President Zelensky said that figure of $500 billion was not a serious offer. He says the US has supplied $67 billion in weapons and $32 billion in budget support. He says while Ukraine is grateful for that, it is not the same as $500 billion of Ukraine's mineral resources. He said he cannot sell his country. So now General Keith Kellogg, the White House envoy to Ukraine, is in Kyiv to say, he says, listen to Ukraine's concerns about all of this and bring back that information to President Donald Trump. But at this point, Kyiv is concerned that while there may be those in the Washington administration that are willing to listen to Ukraine's concerns, President Donald Trump has already decided where he thinks these negotiations should go. Stuart Smith in Kyiv for A News.
A News spoke to Rudolf Mihovich from Christian Medical Association of Ukraine for his take on Zelensky's comments.
Absolutely, obviously, we need US on the board, standing with Ukraine, standing with democracy. Unfortunately, President Trump and his administration literally in some lying bubble, because he's continued to repeat misfacts like $300 billion that were not spent on Ukraine, or 4% support on Zelensky. as Ukrainian, that the whole time in Ukraine, we have different thoughts on Zelensky because we are a democratic country. We can criticize our president, and we are, but it's much more than 4% than President Trump mentioned yesterday. So unfortunately, he lives in some misfact bubble that we hope very much that will lead him not to bad decisions. So we need to talk the truth, to tell truth, because truth will lead to just peace.
You can watch the full interview with Rudolf Mihovich in Headlines with Anita Sharma straight after the news bulletin. 4 people have been injured following a Russian drone attack in Ukraine's southern region of Odessa. According to Ukraine's military, it was part of an overnight drone attack on the southern Odessa region and other parts of the country.
At least 4 people have been injured, including a child, in Ukraine's southern region of Odessa after a Russian drone attack. The strike caused widespread power cuts and damaged civilian infrastructure, including a kindergarten and a children's clinic. Officials say energy workers are assessing the impact on one of the city's largest districts, with 250,000 residents which lost heating and power.
The situation regarding heating was very difficult. Thus, we've decided to drain the water from the central heating system to prevent the system from freezing and not to make the situation worse.
The military says that Russia launched 167 drones during overnight attacks on the southern Odessa region and other parts of the country. Air defense units and mobile drone hunting groups shot down 106 of them. Odessa has been a frequent target of Russian attacks in the nearly 3-year-old war, particularly facilities in the ports and around the city. Russia denies deliberately targeting civilians, though thousands have been killed since it launched a full-scale invasion of its neighbor in February 2022.
The European Union has agreed on a new sanctions package against Russia, aiming to increase pressure on Moscow while supporting Kyiv. The 16th round of sanctions targets Russia's aluminium industry, tightens oil export restrictions, and blacklists 13 more banks and 73 shadow fleet tankers. It also includes a phased ban on certain Russian aluminium products. Endorsed by ambassadors from all the EU's 27 countries, the package extends to sanctions against individuals and companies aiding Russia's war effort. Germany heads to the polls this Sunday after a brief but intense election campaign, dominated by debates on immigration, security and economic challenges. With just days to go, public discontent is being shown through protests, economic concerns and growing calls for change.
Germans have been voicing their frustrations and concerns ahead of the federal election on February the 23rd. Right now, faith in the government is at its lowest point in over a decade, having fallen to 50% in 2024, according to Gallup's poll. Over the weekend, Munich saw a massive demonstration with 200,000 people protesting against the far-right Alternative for Germany party and its migration policies. Economic concerns are also a major worry. Many Germans are frustrated with the ruling traffic light coalition with the Social Democrats, Greens and Liberals. In Bavaria, farmers worry that any change in policies will put their livelihoods at risk.
We've made investments that will take 20 to 30 years to pay off, and it just isn't sustainable that everything is then suddenly different every 5 years, referring to elections. There is no carpentry business, dairy business, no agricultural business that can survive this. This has to stop, and we need to get rid of this bureaucracy.
The growing economic divide is another concern as more people rely on food banks. Last year, there were 975 of them in the country, according to Statista.
What I would like from the next election is that the gap between rich and poor is narrowed, that the people who come to us get more help and relief, and in an ideal world that we wouldn't be needed anymore.
Living standards have reduced in Germany, according to Gallup, which says the percentage of people who say their situation is improving dropped sharply from 42% in 2023 to 27% last year. The poll also shows that at a time of global uncertainty and regional turmoil, Germany's standing in Europe is slipping. The choice voters make on Sunday will shape the country's future, influencing its leadership and direction for years to come.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has arrived at the Tel Aviv District Court to take the stand in his long-running corruption trial. Netanyahu arrived with his legal team after he was ordered to testify in the 2019 indictment in 3 cases, involving gifts from millionaire friends and allegedly seeking regulatory favours for media tycoons in return for favourable news coverage. He has denied any wrongdoing and has pleaded not guilty. Netanyahu is Israel's first sitting prime minister to be charged with a crime. Hamas says it will release 6 living hostages on Saturday and 4 deceased on Thursday. It's after Israel and Hamas have begun indirect negotiations of the second stage of the ceasefire deal, aimed at releasing the remaining 64 hostages. This next phase is being mediated by Egypt and Qatar in Cairo.
Israel and Hamas have begun a new phase of indirect negotiations after a Cairo-brokered ceasefire deal, facilitated by Egypt and Qatar. This agreement includes the release of 6 living and 8 deceased hostages in the coming days, as well as the release of Palestinian prisoners in Israel. This new phase will take place in 3 stages. On Thursday, 4 deceased hostages will be handed over by Hamas, followed by 4 more next week. On Saturday, 6 of the remaining live hostages will get to return to their families. Officials have not yet disclosed the names of those who've died who are set to return. Among those to be released on Saturday alive will Elia Cohen, Tal Shoham, Omer Shemtov, and Omer Wenkert, who were taken during the October 7th attack, and Hisham al-Sayed and Avera Mengistu, who crossed over into Gaza independently of each other around a decade ago and have been held since then.
My brother Elia Cohen is kidnapped from the party in the 7th of October, and we really miss him.
We need more efforts to bring them back alive. Returning hostages in coffins is not a victory.
For months, families have been calling on Israeli leaders to intensify negotiations. Many have also appealed to the international community for support.
All the leaders need to take act. They need to do more pressure on the other countries and more pressure on Egypt and Qatar and the US to build a satisfaction agreement to take all the hostages out.
We're dealing with a very cruel enemy, and we shouldn't leave anyone behind in Gaza. This is for sure. This is everybody in Israel understand.
The first phase of hostage releases in November 2023 returned dozens of people, but many, like 40-year-old Tal Shoham, remain in captivity. His family is still waiting for news.
My father was murdered here. Nothing that I can do will change that. For the rest of my life, this tragedy will be with me. But we can save Tal, and we can save so many of the hostages.
His kids and his wife and the parents and the whole family is waiting for him to be home, safe and alive.
So far, 19 Israeli hostages have been returned in exchange for the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and detainees. Continued negotiations are expected to be tough because they include issues such as the administration of post-war Gaza, where there are large gaps between the sides.
Palestinian business owners in the Jabalia refugee camp struggle to revive their daily activities in the harsh conditions. However, despite the challenges, some business owners share a common hope for peace and stability.
Despite the destruction in northern Gaza, Palestinian business owners in the Jabalia refugee camp are doing their best to rebuild and revive their daily activities. From restaurants to bakeries, entrepreneurs are facing immense challenges, yet they remain determined to continue their work.
The place where we are, as you see, I used to have a floor here and a floor upstairs. We had 200 tables. From 200 tables, only 1 table remained, and here it is broken. We only have this one. I had 12 workers. Today I'm alone at this place because the work became bad. People have no money. They spent all their money.
As businesses continue to struggle, local workers are also doing their best to adapt.
Today the work takes time, costs, wood. We did not use wood and we did not know how to use it. The war taught us how to use it. Everything was operated by gas and everything was organized.
The water desalination plant, which was a crucial lifeline for the camp, has also suffered heavy damage.
Before the war, water produced from the plant reached 25 cubic meters per hour. Today, it produces only 15 cubic meters due to the destruction and lack of electricity, also lack of material for the plant. We cannot source them.
In the face of these challenges, all the business owners share a common hope, peace and stability.
We don't want a truce. What are we going to do with a truce? We want the war to end and peace and security to prevail for us and our neighbours, no matter how it costs. This is what I want. Peace and security. That's it. I only want this. We shall put our hands together and rebuild this country.
Amid the destruction, the people of Jabalia remain determined to persevere. Their resilience reflects a collective hope that one day the community will heal and recover.
Gaza's reconstruction will require an estimated $53 billion. That's according to a report by the World Bank Group, which says Israeli military operations have caused $49 billion in damages.
The Gaza and West Bank Rapid Damage and Needs Assessment Report, jointly prepared by the World Bank, the European Union and the United Nations, provides a comprehensive analysis of the destruction, economic losses and recovery needs affecting nearly all sectors of the Palestinian economy. The report underscores the devastating impact of the conflict that began on October 7, 2023, which has resulted in extensive casualties, mass displacement, and severe damage to social, physical, and economic infrastructure, exacerbating an already dire humanitarian crisis. Residential buildings suffered the most, accounting for 53% of the total destruction. The commercial and industrial sectors follow, contributing to 20% of the losses, while essential infrastructure such as healthcare, water, and transportation makes up over 15% of the total damage.
The UN warns that Afghanistan's ban on women's medical education could worsen the healthcare crisis, as humanitarian access has dropped by 17% due to project suspensions. Reporting from Kabul, Tamim Bahis has more details on this matter.
Humanitarian operations in Afghanistan continue to face significant challenges. The United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs reported that in January 2025, there were 127 excess incidents, with the de facto Afghan authorities responsible for 83% of those incidents. While the number of incidents decreased by 17% from last year and 14% from the previous month, the impact remains severe. 56 aid projects were temporarily suspended, some for up to 30 days, and nearly half still remains suspended, affecting assistance to those in need. The biggest issue was interference in humanitarian work, with 87 cases reported, including demands for sensitive staff data, restriction on female aid workers, and interference in aid distribution. Because of these, 26 projects were suspended and most remain on hold. Harsh weather also added to the difficulties, with heavy snowfall and rain disturbing aid efforts. At the same time, security risks increased, with 34 humanitarian workers arrested in January, a 161% rise from December. 15 remains in custody. Meanwhile, the de facto authorities issued 12 new directives further complicating humanitarian efforts. Most came from the Directorate of Economy and other government bodies, reinforcing existing restrictions. Despite some improvement, aid organizations continue to struggle with interference, security risks, and weather challenges, making it harder to deliver help to those in need. The local authorities have yet to officially comment on the report of the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Tamim Bahiz, A News, Kabul, Afghanistan.
Turkey's solar power capacity surpassed 20,000 megawatts, reaching 20,400 megawatts on Sunday. This is a 39% increase from the same period last year, according to data from the Energy and Natural Resources Ministry.
Turkey's solar energy capacity has exceeded 20,400 megawatts with the launch of rooftop, field and hybrid power plants. Solar power plants now rank as the second largest renewable energy source after hydroelectric plants, accounting for 17.5% of Turkey's total installed capacity, a significant increase from 13.8% recorded on February 16th last year. The country aims to expand its solar and wind energy capacity to 120,000 megawatts by 2035. To meet this target, it will need to add 4,000 to 5,000 megawatts of solar capacity annually, alongside other capacity enhancements. Currently, electricity produced from solar energy costs 50% less than electricity generated from coal and natural gas. Despite its lower cost, the main challenge of solar energy is that electricity production stops without sunlight. Starting in 2026, the commissioning of storage-based solar power plants will allow continuity in electricity generation from solar energy.
With a sharp rise in Chinese businesses, China is outpacing Russia in Uzbekistan's foreign investments. At the same time, Beijing is boosting its political and security influence across Central Asia. Fariza Kalamazina reports from Almaty in Kazakhstan.
China is actively increasing its economic influence in Central Asia, exceeding Russia in the number of enterprises with foreign capital in Uzbekistan. According to the country's statistics agency, the number of Chinese companies in Uzbekistan as of February 1st, 2025 reached 3,357, which is 43.6% increase compared to last year. This marks a record growth, while the number of Russian companies has decreased by 3.5%. In total, more than 15,000 enterprises with foreign investments are operating in Uzbekistan. China is actively involved in large-scale projects in the country, such as the construction of hydroelectric power plants and telecommunications initiatives. China is also strengthening its economic role in other Central Asian countries. In Kazakhstan, the number of Chinese companies has grown by 50% over the past 2 years, while the number of companies from Russia and Turkey has declined by 10%. In Tajikistan, China remains the largest investor with more than 600 operating Chinese companies involved in mining and the production of building materials. According to the General Administration of Customs of China, the total trade turnover between China and Central Asian countries in 2024 amounted to $94.8 billion, which is $5.4 billion more than in 2023. An important step in consolidating China's position was the creation of the China-Central Asia format, which by 2025 could become a central hub for Chinese initiatives in the region. Meanwhile, experts note that changes in the geopolitical situation, particularly the war in Ukraine, have weakened Russia's position, opening up opportunities for China to expand its influence in Central Asia, not only in the economic but also in the political sphere. China continues to develop infrastructure projects and is actively entering the region's political space. Additionally, Beijing is increasing its influence in the security domain by operating military bases in Tajikistan, participating in the fight against terrorism and advancing its interests through the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. From Almaty, Kazakhstan, Fariza Kalimurzana, A News.
Pope Francis has been diagnosed with double pneumonia, further complicating his treatment as he remains in Rome's Gemelli Hospital. The Vatican has not provided details on the duration of Pope Francis's hospital stay.
The 88-year-old pontiff was admitted on February 14 after suffering from a respiratory infection for more than a week. A recent chest CT scan revealed bilateral pneumonia, an infection affecting both lungs that makes breathing difficult. The Vatican said the Pope is receiving additional pharmacological therapy, but remains in good spirits. Officials also confirmed he's breathing on his own and has not been placed on a ventilator. Pope Francis has been especially vulnerable to lung infections since his youth, when he underwent surgery to remove part of one lung due to pleurisy. His condition prompted doctors to adjust his treatment for a second time, citing a polymicrobial infection of the respiratory tract, which involves multiple microorganisms and can be caused by bacteria, viruses, or fungi. Dozens of faithful prayed for Pope Francis' recovery outside Rome's Gemelli Hospital, where he remains under medical supervision. Many expressed their hopes for his swift recovery. Amid his health concerns, the Vatican has cancelled all public events on its schedule through Sunday, including key engagements for the 2025 Catholic Holy Year, which is expected to draw millions of pilgrims to Rome. The Vatican has not provided details on the duration of Francis' hospital stay, but said he will remain under medical supervision as long as necessary.
That's all for now, but don't go anywhere. Stay tuned to A News for more exclusive updates. We'll be back soon.